Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Azazel. So not only was this kind of the ideal Azazel daily, because we're going to Mom's Heart, which means we don't have to fight a Hush, and that's usually just always a good idea, because you don't really want to fight a Hush as someone who basically has no range. But even beyond that, I feel like it was a very by-the-book standard daily. There weren't a lot of discrepancies, like tricky strategies or maybe ways to break the game or anything like that, but essentially what ended up happening was that we were going basically to boss rush. Of course you beat boss rush, and after you're basically looking for the first sacrifice room, and when that happens of course you go to the dark room, you beat the dark room, but just because there really isn't a lot of variation there, like I didn't find an Awas rune or maybe even an obvious shovel, I feel like a lot of people will have the very same experience, and as a result of course what ends up happening is that when people kind of follow the same path, it becomes much more about just how well you're playing and just maybe how well you can use the game to your advantage. So, you know, for example, you have the Yarrow rune and then you're maybe trying to fish out something like the Two of Diamonds or the Two of Clubs just to get a little bit more swag bonus. And in the end, I feel like that's a really good representation, not only of player skill, but also player's knowledge. Like, it isn't so much about who found the lucky shovel or maybe who found the lucky Awas rune, but it becomes much more about just game knowledge and just how well you're playing and just how skillful you are at actually pulling some of the combos off. And I tend to enjoy that in just the general case scenario. And I try to play pretty standard here. I didn't take any crazy risk like I usually do. Like, for example, there was an experimental treatment at some point, and usually I think I would have taken it because it's just one of those very random lol items, but I decided not to because I felt like the random stats weren't worth it, and also the item penalty is probably better if I just avoid it in the first place. But how it turned out, like maybe if you just focus on the run a little bit, I feel like the start of it was pretty interesting because not the Butterbean, but the improved version, wait what? And I hate saying that name because whenever I say it, I feel like I'm about to start a sentence. Like, it's not a name that's just like a name, it's basically two words together which sound like a question, so yeah, whatever. So wait what or improved Butterbean, I just call it Butterbean sometimes, because the real Butterbean doesn't really warrant to be mentioned because of how useless it is, but the improved Butterbean actually does have some uses. And I think that the improved Butterbean is just supremely balanced. And when you think about it, what it does, of course, when you use it, you emit a shockwave around you, and those shockwaves have an explosive property. You can kind of blow up walls, you can blow up rocks, or just anything like that, and it does allow you to find secret rooms, and that's obviously a very powerful effect because it's on an infinite recharge timer, which means you can use it infinitely many amount of times, and if time wasn't a factor, it would just be essential like free unlimited bombs. And in a lot of situations, that's what the item ends up being. But what's even better is that when you use it, it has a very deliberate recharge time, and I feel like it's very supremely balanced, because suddenly now what you're doing is, sure, you're not using your bombs to blow them up, but you're trading your time away. And when you're playing a run that's very restricted with time, like a daily run, you have to get to Hush, you have to get to boss rush, so time becomes of the essence. And it has this very weird property, I won't call it a weird property, like just the way the item is coded, is when you use it, you emit a shockwave around you, and they are very deliberately placed, like they don't really outcome of your character at a steady pace. Like, you have to be a very certain direction away from the wall if you actually want the shockwave to hit exactly on the center and unveil a secret room. And for that reason, when you use your item next to a wall, and maybe there isn't a secret room there, you can never really be sure if you just missed, like maybe you just weren't in the right position, or if there actually isn't a secret room there. So what ends up happening is maybe you retry again, just to make sure, maybe you try another wall, but every time you try, you have to wait like 5 to 10 seconds, I'm not really sure what the recharge time is, and obviously that adds up after a while, and because you have 2 secret rooms to find, maybe you use it like one on a tinted rock, you're looking at something like extra 20 seconds every floor, if you're just kind of trying and just experimenting on just a lot of the different walls. Obviously there's a way to kind of improve on that, and you're just kind of going through the rooms, just kind of clearing them normally, and you use the item whenever it's available, and that's obviously the ideal case situation, but you still can't guarantee that you're gonna find the secret rooms unless you're like I said, in a very deliberate position. And because of that, I feel like it's a very interesting item to use. If not a little bit frustrating, but I feel like it's frustrating in the right way. Like, it doesn't reward you for using it well, but it doesn't reward you for just using it. You also need to take some of the other things into consideration. And just in the general case scenario, I feel like it's gonna be one of those items which really kind of teaches you time management. Like, is this enough? Should I kind of leave the floor now because there's not a lot of chance I'll find another secret room? is maybe my time that I'm actually spending trying to do this worth it? And in the end, you know, some cases it might be worth it, in some cases it might not be worth it. It really depends on the situation, and it comes up to your overall time management. And I feel like for all of those reasons, the item is supremely balanced, even if maybe it does seem like it's just a better version of Butterbean in the first place. It still retains the original Butterbean effects, which I also think is pretty neat. Like, for example, if there are shots coming your way, you can just use it to deflect the shot, so it has some of that defensive property. It works similarly to telekinesis in some sense, except I would say it's a little bit less powerful in that regard. But it does still have, of course, that positive benefit of actually being able to do damage, but also work like as an explosive. So as the run went on, of course, I found a few other items which I think really work supremely well with Azazel, and one of them is the Razor Apple. I'm not really sure what the item is called, but the Razor Apple, it's one of the new items, and at first I'm never sure if this item actually works with Azazel. I know that for sure that the other one, that shoots Toots, teeth with an increased damage multiplier. That one does work with Azazel, or at least with Brimstone in general, and I wasn't sure if the Razor Apple actually did anything, but it was quite apparent, and like every time I charge up a shot, there was a small chance for that shot to just deal like 4 times the amount of damage, and I was pretty much instantly melting a lot of the bosses in the end game. This was really apparent in the Dark Room especially, when I was in a room with like 2 cages or 2 adversaries or something like that, and one of my shots was extremely buffed, and I was able to basically take the boss out with just a single hit, or at least with one single charge, where I took like 7 or 8 charges in total to kill the boss on the other side. So because there were a pair, of course, I basically killed one instantly, and it took me a little bit longer to kill the other one. So it does synergize with Brimstone, and I would definitely recommend this item because it's really powerful, and especially helpful if you're going to the Dark Room and you know you're going to be fighting some of those high HP enemies. You're basically gonna be instantly melting them as soon as that happens. But besides that, this run was also very kind in the damage department. We got a lot of damage upgrades. We got Cricket's Head, we got Synth Oil, we also got Jesus Juice, and all of those things do add not only damage, but also a bit of range on top of what you already have. And it's not very significant, as with Azazel, all range upgrades really aren't all that significant, but it does add a little bit extra of that safety net, and I feel like because of that, they're generally a good idea to pick up. And sadly, this run, even though I did say it was very good and very like standard, it did have a lot of enemies which weren't really Azazel friendly. And when I say Azazel friendly, I just mean like enemies maybe that jump around a lot. It's really hard to kind of predict them, especially if there's multiple amount of them in a room, or maybe enemies which charge at you, because you have to be just a little bit more careful in that regard. And there were, I think, like 3 or 4 Mask of Infamous in the total run. And obviously that's a boss that you don't want to be facing. Like, I guess killing the heart is pretty easy, but when you get to the mask part, because the sprite is so big, your Brimstone essentially just ranges from one side of the sprite to the other. So you have to be really, really close, and because it moves so erratically and randomly, you can just never be sure if it's just actually gonna go in your direction and start charging at you and gonna hit you that way. And when that ends up happening, of course, it's just a bummer. I guess I think that's what Azazel's most of the damage problems, I mean range problems, lie from. It's just a bummer. Like, it's not something that you can't control, but it's definitely something that maybe doesn't feel as rewarding. But still, like I said, I couldn't have complained. The run was really good. It gave us a lot of damage upgrades. We even got quite a few tier upgrades that kind of allowed us to charge a little bit faster. The only thing I would say that was maybe a bit silly in this regard was definitely the lamb. And I hate these homing shots because they have this weird property. I mean, the first phase isn't that bad, but when he enters the second phase, he has this weird homing shots which kind of wrap around you, and I'm not really sure how you're supposed to dodge them, because as soon as you maybe go from the center, the tears are actually gonna start going in your direction, and you're just gonna be surrounded. And of course, it all depends on when he does the attack, in which direction, but in the position I was in, I was kind of forced to run into the wall, and I don't think I could have avoided it in the first place. So I got hit 2 times, and I did end up at like 35,700 points, which is an alright score, but what was really surprising to me that someone with like 36,000 and like 200 score was actually ranked 10th, so there was like a discrepancy of 15 ranks for just 500 score, and that might not seem like a lot. I mean, it is a lot in some regard, but it is basically the 2 hits I suffered at the end that was the difference between me being in the 25th place and the 10th place, and that's really encouraging to know, because I know I can avoid damage penalty, I know I can play a little bit better, so if I just kind of improve on that aspect a little bit, I could end up ranking much better than I'm ranking right now. But besides that, our life penalty was relatively low, we didn't pick up a lot of items. Our exploration bonus could have also been better, but all in all, I would say that it was a very enjoyable daily, with a very straightforward goal, with not too many discrepancies if you're kind of looking at the whole picture. So with that said, I hope you're enjoying this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.